Well, that right there will sure ruin your weekend, let me tell you what. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of D-Ray's Shop. The other day I was driving my 2007 Chevrolet 3/4 ton C2500, and I was towing a boat to the lake, and during a relatively hard acceleration up a steep hill, I experienced the dreaded reduced engine power code on my truck, and it was pretty spooky because it gives you very limited throttle control and it just doesn't really run very good. So pulled off to the side of the road, shut the truck off for just a moment or two, started it back up, and it seemed to run okay, but the check engine light stayed on. And as long as I didn't give the truck too much throttle, it seemed to do okay, so I was able to finish my trip and limp on back to the house with it. After having a buddy of mine hook a scan tool to it, I retrieved the error code P1516, which points at the throttle actuator control, which is commonly referred to as the TAC. A lot of people just refer to it as the throttle body. And so I did a little research on the internet and just found just forum after forum of all kinds of just problems and just trouble with finding the root cause of the problem, and just a lot of headaches trying to diagnose this thing. So I did a little research on my own and decided I was going to try to fix this thing myself. So let me show you what I found. It's really not so hard to do if you have this particular problem. So let's dive right into it. Let me show you what I found. Now we got this intake boot out of the way, we can take a little bit better look at our throttle body assembly. And the way this works is, instead of having a throttle cable, this is kind of what they call drive-by-wire technology. You've got a wiring harness here that hooks on to the throttle body, and it's got a little step motor in here that opens and closes the butterfly depending on the load and what position you have the throttle pedal in. Well, one of the things you want to look at on these, especially on vehicles with high miles, is you want to open this throttle body and look at the butterfly and see if it has a lot of carbon or just varnish buildup from just years of having old gas run through it and everything. Because if that is sticking, if it doesn't want to return good and that thing sticks, then it can throw an error code because it's putting itself in a bind, and the computer registers that it's not returning properly, so that can throw a code. Of course, on this one here, the throttle body's pretty clean, so we're not going to really worry about that so much. So the next thing that we want to look at is the connector itself. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take that connector off and see if it has any moisture or corrosion inside this connector here. So the way you take that off is you pull the little lock tab back, then push on the little pin in the middle, and just simply take that connector off. Then we're going to take a look at it here. This one looks real clean and dry, doesn't have any evidence of having moisture or corrosion. So we want to move on to the next step. This is what's called the tug test. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these wires individually, one at a time. We're going to lightly tug on them, push them back and forth to see if we can feel any loose connections or anything like that. Now what you'll find is when you give it the tug test, you can pull on it. You don't want to pull on it real hard, but you want to give it just a little tug there to make sure that everything's connected real good. Hey, now look at here. Look at here. This is our gray wire. It's a small gauge wire here. I'm going to try to do this where you can see it. I'm grabbing a hold of it here and I'm going to give it a little tug. See how far that's pulling out? What I'm doing is basically I'm just pulling on the insulation. The wire inside of that is not touching anything. That's just the insulation stretching. There's our problem right there. So what I'm doing now is I'm digging into this connector a little deeper. I already pried this inner guide plate loose. I'm going to take it out of the way, which exposes all your connectors. Then on the back side, there's a couple of tabs here and here that holds this little wire loom holder in place. Then on the front side here, there's little plastic tabs. There's little plastic tabs through here that holds all these individual terminals into this connector. So you can reach in there with a, what I've been using was a T-pin. I just took a T-pin in here and just very carefully pry the little plastic tab up, and that releases that terminal, and then you can just push it out the back side of that connector. Now we're going to extract that out of there, and there's our suspect wire. with its little rubber seal on it. And look at there. There's nothing at all holding that but the vinyl. The wire is completely broken all the way. So there's nothing holding that on. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it in two. And as you can see, there's nothing there. The wire was broken. It was probably originally only holding on by a few strands, which would it would allow it to run and operate as long as you didn't throw too much of a load on it. And of course, after I give it the tug test and connected everything back up and tried to start the truck up, it immediately went to the reduced engine power, wouldn't drive at all. So that pretty much told me that this right here was the root of my problem. So it's very important to check that wiring harness, because I've heard tales of folks replacing throttle bodies and they would disturb the wiring on it. It would actually be a wiring problem, but in the process of installing the throttle body, they would disturb the wiring, put it all back together, and it would actually make contact, so they think they had it fixed. In a month or two or whatever down the road, they would go back to having the same symptoms again, and this would be your root of your problem from the get-go. So it's save you a little money here. Check this wiring. On a little footnote, guys, this is my 100th YouTube video. I just want to kind of thank everybody for keeping up with my videos over the last few years. I hope to make a whole lot more of them. It's just, I've had a real good time making these videos on YouTube, and I really enjoy it. So, thanks y'all. See you.